Hi, this is TheHande Mäkinen, and welcome back to Ranking a Soundtrack. This time it's Jackrabbit 1. As per the unofficial Aqualung rules of ranking the soundtrack, in this video I'll be ranking the level themes from the first 6 episodes of Jackrabbit, excluding the title song, the episode ending songs, the bonus level themes, etc. And also all the level themes from the additional content such as the holiday hair, etc. You might be wondering, why am I making so many exclusions? But even sticking to just the main level themes from all 6 episodes, I'm going to be ranking 18 songs in total once again. So enough meandering, let's get on with the ranking. At number 18, it's Fanolint. This is easily my least favorite track from the soundtrack. It's just very trudgy, and it just never really goes anywhere, has no really distinct melody. It does have some nice synths, and even the bad songs on the Jackrabbit soundtrack usually at least have one instrument that I really like. But like I said, this one just never really goes anywhere. It just kind of keeps beating in place, and that's why I don't really like it. At number 17, Sluggian. This song sounds desperate. That distortion wave is just way too much. Now this is already in the middle of the second to last episode of the game, so this song always sounds to me like the composers were getting a little desperate, like they needed to throw something new at the listener to not make this one sound exactly like the songs that had come before it. It also has these really weak electric guitar samples that just don't do a lot for the song. However, there is this really nice flute section at the very end of the song cycle, which is the only reason I'm willing to put it above Fanolint, but other than that, not a big fan of this one. At number 16, Ledney. This literally sounds like a Roxette song that just never gets going. And that's the reason I like it better than Sluggian and Fanolint, because, spoiler alert, I actually like Roxette. But like I said, it never really goes anywhere, and that's the reason I'm not a big fan of it. At number 15, Dream Pipes. Man, those piano samples make this sound like the theme song to an educational software CD-ROM. And I think that perfectly describes its position on the ranking as well. It doesn't actually sound bad, it just doesn't sound like it should be in a Jackrabbit soundtrack. Dream Pipes is one of my least favorite levels anyway, and I can't say that this song really does anything to enhance the atmosphere. At number 14, Pez Rock. Now this one actually has some really nice drums and synths, but just like a lot of the songs on this half of the soundtrack, the melody just never goes anywhere. This song honestly feels completely directionless, perhaps even more so than the ones that came before it. However, there is this really nice breakdown section at the very end of it, which is the only reason I'm willing to put it above the first 4 songs, because this is at least one very distinct element that makes it stand out from the other ones. At number 13, Nippies, the obligatory ice level theme, and I do have to appreciate that Epic Mega Games avoided the temptation to just make this into a Christmassy song, but I think it's a little too heavy. Honestly, it's quite trudgy, and that makes it sound kind of unpleasant. But it actually does have a very distinct energy to it and a bit of a drive, which is the reason I actually like it better than all those other songs up to this point. It's the first song on the soundtrack that honestly seems to have a distinct direction that it seems to be headed towards, and that's the reason why it ends up here. At number 12, Battleships. This is the theme from the very final level of Jackrabbit, and it's one of 2 songs on this soundtrack that really reminds me of Star Control. This one is very gloomy and doomy, and has a great dark atmosphere. I could really imagine this as an alternate theme song to the Urquan Korra or something. And it is a very complex piece, but that I think is also kinda its biggest weakness. It has a very slow start. I mean, you do spend a long time in that level, so you will get to hear this song quite a bit. But I am honestly a bigger fan of the jazz tracks that get to the point immediately. So that's why it landed outside the top 10. At number 11, Jung Rock. This one is very airy and pleasant sounding, and honestly has a bit of a Maui Mallardy energy to it. I really do like it. It's maybe a little too laid back, which is maybe my biggest reason for landing it just outside the top 10, but I did honestly contemplate momentarily about putting it even in the top 10. At number 10, Scrap-a-Rap. Now, this one also has a super slow intro, but once the song gets going, there is this really nice sharp pan whistle that plays all the way through it. In fact, there's a lot of great flute sections in this soundtrack, which is kind of interesting. It's not the first thing you would really think of with Jackrabbit. And honestly, it's that very decisive and distinct tune which pushes it slightly above Jung Rock in the ranking for me. At number 9, Marbalara. Now this one has a very nice melody progression to it. I really like the cyclical nature of it, and honestly, this could have worked really well as a level 1 song, and in a way it sort of is. It is the first planet of the 5th episode. But I think on the overall, it goes around in circles a little bit, and maybe isn't that definitive in its direction, which is the reason why I couldn't have it much higher. But again, this song actually does get going right from the get-go, which is why I like it slightly better than Scrap-a-Rap. At number 8, Chrysalis. I really like the piano sample on this one, and the melody progression is very dramatic. The various phases of it just sound awesome to me, and that's the reason why I wanted to put it a bit above Marbalara, because it has a more definite sense of purpose. But it is a bit rough around the edges. It has that distortion effect again, but not nearly as obnoxious as in Sluggian. And some of the synths are nice, but maybe not as good as they could have been. There's a lot of room for improvement in this one, which is why I couldn't have it in the top 5, but I do think it's still a pretty solid package on the overall, which is why it landed this high on the ranking. At number 7, Medievo. Now this is a song that I really would want to like more, but again, it does suffer from a very, very slow start. But I will say this has some of the best drum samples from the entire soundtrack, and those really haunting main melodies is the thing that makes this so great. In fact, Medievo is one of 3 tracks from this soundtrack that was recycled to Jackrabbit 2, and I can totally see why. It actually has a bit of a weirdly chill atmosphere for being the final level of the first episode, but it also has a lot of layers to its composition, making it one of the more complex songs in the entire soundtrack, and that's why I really like it. But yeah, I really wish the song maybe would be more amped up, and maybe if it got to the point a lot quicker, it could have gotten a bit higher. But number 7 is still pretty good. At number 6, Orbitus. Yeah, this one also reminds me of Star Control. It has a very nice sound to it with those doot sounds. I could totally hear this as the main theme of some friendly alien species from that game. It just puts a smile on my face, and that's the main reason it gets all the way this high on the soundtrack. Having said that, I avoided putting it in the top 5 because sounding like Star Control music makes it feel a little out of place for Jackrabbit in a weird way, but it is still a really good song. At number 5, Diamondus, the level 1 song of the entire game. This one is super chipper and fun, very recognizable, and I think that was the reason why they used it. This is sort of like the Green Hill Zone theme of Jackrabbit, and I always get in a good mood while listening to it. There's nothing super fancy about it, it's just a really solidly put together song, and that's why I had to put it in the top 5 at the very least, but I'll only put it in the lowest position because I do think that the top 4 songs all have way more recognizable musical elements. At number 4, Tur Temple. Now this one has another excellent pan flute section. It's actually very bare bones and also kind of slow, but I just love the way the melody builds on itself all the way through it. In my opinion, it's easily one of the catchiest and one of my favorite songs from this soundtrack. Which is funny because you probably will get to hear the speeded up version a lot more because in the levels where this one plays, you often get the speed power up. But nevertheless, it had to make the top 4, but because it is so slow, I didn't want to put it in the top 3. At number 3, Mega Air Bass. This has by far the most incessantly catchy flute section of the entire soundtrack. In fact, some of you might even find it a little bit annoying. It just kind of keeps looping in on itself, but I don't know, I just really love it. I think it just sounds cool, and that's why it went up all the way in the top 3. At number 2, Tech Noir. I don't think this surprised anybody. This has some of the hardest drums on the entire soundtrack, excellent synth beeps, and a super cheesy voice sample in the midst of it. It has a very doomy sound with those dark instrument hits. And honestly, the melody almost reminds me of TMNT in a weird way. This is just one kick-ass song, so it obviously had to make it into the top 3. But there was only one song that was ever going to be number 1, and that song is number 1, Tube Electric. This one is just super cool. The main melody is just so catchy, and that breakdown at the end is just fucking chaotic, but I love it. Easily one of my favorite stage themes from any video game, and again, super happy that this one got recycled for Jazz 2. So that was the soundtrack ranking. Tell me, what are your favorite songs from the first Jazz Jackrabbit game, other than the main theme obviously. I'm TheHande. See you on the next one.